So which gets to a pretty interesting topic that we built for this class, where we titled it "The Danger versus the Power of Intuition." And so this notion, we had a whole talk last week around emotions, and emotions are very connected to intuition. And intuition is when you are making decisions with incredible speed. It's almost like all the knowledge is already inside you, and then you have a gut instinct of what you want to do, what you're thinking. And so we were talking about the notion that it cuts both ways. And because it cuts both ways, we are generally trained to suppress our emotions. We're generally trained to suppress our intuition. And I know we were talking a little bit about the whole go with your gut, go with your instinct. As much as people give advice that way, when it comes to decisions they make, we are trained almost automatically to suppress our intuition, suppress because it is dangerous. And so we ended up having a call this week with a pretty well-known team, and this exact topic came up. And so I'm just going to share some of, without mentioning the name, was talking about this notion of how do you be more objective, which is another like fancy term for how do you calm down, how do you get to your senses versus when you think of emotion. What he talked about was, look, when you think of emotion, it can be protective, it can be destructive. So you have to be careful about it. And so there's something that happened and he got pissed off, right? And so it was with an important business partner. He got pissed off and he wrote a note. And then because he knew that emotion was in it, he tried to be very careful, tried to edit and filter down the note and then hit send. The person who received it was pissed off. Like even after all the filtering, right? He was pissed off. And then we had to spend all this time to find a way to recover and repair the relationship, because even after he knew that it could be protective, destructive, and send, after editing, it still created damage. And so the lesson is, whenever you feel emotion, right, be careful, don't send. People say sleep overnight on it and whatnot. So here's the challenge. And by the way, that's the danger of intuition, the danger of emotion moving that quickly, right? So that danger was real. So he was sharing what he thought was an important lesson and take this lesson and whatnot. And so we challenged him on the call saying, so here's the flip side of intuition, right? The flip side of emotion. Instead of actually suppressing, if we were there, Megan and I, and we challenged you, right? So in that exact session, right? So not to hit send, but we're going to challenge you, pushing higher into the emotion and just blurt out unfiltered what you want them to do, why you're so upset, what you wish they had done. And have you found instances where in the act of blurting it out, like nuggets of gold come out of your mouth?
You kind of want to erase maybe 90% of what you just said, but there's 10%, right? Like maybe you don't, that's what it is, right? But to get that awesome good.
Well, so actually, no, it's interesting. It's so funny you said 90%.
How much?
I find often you end up only having to erase 10 to 20%. It's a lot less than you think, where the majority is actually gold if you can capture your intuition. And we'll talk about when intuition works best and when it doesn't work. So, but this notion, but still, but that could be also over time trained better. That's true. Where your intuition at the beginning might have a lot more junk and noise, like irrelevant from the mission you need to accomplish.
Right. Or said to extreme.
Extreme. But it's amazing how unfiltered, if you just blurt it out, what comes out is capturing a shortcut to usually solve very difficult problems. But because we don't blurt this out, we're instantly training ourselves to suppress. And usually when you find your emotions charged up, right? Charged up as in you get angry or you get really depressed, whichever side it might be. That's the instance something triggered it, which means that your intuition, which in some ways is your life database of all your life experiences and knowledge summed up, weighted inside your own system, just rapidly, it's a version of like ChatGPT. It's a version, but it's more powerful, but it's a different type of power. So maybe we'll kind of jump into this class, but it was fascinating, and the discussion got very interesting with this individual, very successful individual, talking about kind of this, what he thought was the only way to act on emotion, which is you have to calm down, versus training this other side. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up what we put together here. So this was all around the danger versus the power of intuition. So it cuts both ways. And to recognize it is actually, we believe, the most important skill to learn at this point. And so I'm just going to go. We shared this slide, I think, in the 2 LIP classes before. If you are able to monitor your energy scale, how the middle zone is the zone that is most ineffective for intuition. Intuition is best on either end of the pie. Really good energy, really bad energy. And so a lot of us think about 8, 9, 10 really good energy, but we usually think 0, 1, 2 is bad. And we spend a lot of time generally trying to go to the middle. So we'll use this term a lot, 3, 7 energy, right? 3, 7 simply meaning you're in that mediocre energy zone. You are neither super charged up and excited, but you're not like down and depressed either. In the Leadership Academy we just ran, which I'm just going to give you a quick recap, and then we have a lot of additional knowledge to build on that. That's it. Just the screen's full of a lot of stuff. So
it's funny. I think the kids actually use the phrase mid. Mid for medium. Mid, I feel that mid level, that mid energy in the middle. We're saying you can do a lot of logical, analytical thinking work when you have that mid energy brain, but to actually do really creative, intuitive work, you've got to either oscillate from, we call it bad energy, but it's a different kind of energy than the really good energy. But both extremes is where good things come out of, right? But when you're in that mid, you're kind of like, say it like dead behind the eyes a little bit, right? Like you're just kind of slogging through.
I like thinking of energy as an oscillation of waves, right? Our energy goes up and down. And the notion of, because we've trained ourselves to kind of always be in this controlled middle state, we tend to, if you get too excited, calm down, try to get yourself calm before doing work. Or if we get too low energy, you try to, like, whether it's drink coffee, eat chocolate, whatever it is, and to try to pick back up. And that notion of right in that middle zone is where intuition is the weakest. And this is very counterintuitive because logical work often seems strongest in that middle. So it's the complete opposite from the logical brain versus the intuitive brain. Versus when you go at the very top and at the bottom. And the best way to think of top and bottom is this: until you cross the peak or the value, you won't know what top looks like. And you won't know what bottom looks like. So if you think about pushing yourself to the point of failure, that's what happens at the top. You get so much energy, and you can tell when you hit that peak and then you're on the other side is the only way you'll know you hit peak. In the same way on the bottom, when you get so depleted that you almost feel your entire body and brain shut down as if you powered off, and then you start to charge back up, that's the only way you'll know bottom. Most of us try to avoid both of them. And most of us try to spend the least amount of time and actually see those 2 points as dangerous or bad. And this is the big shift, and we'll walk through kind of from some of what we covered in the Leadership Academy really quick, and then we'll add on to what we did. So I'm going to go to, since you just put it on my Twitter account, it's not a shameless way to try to brag about Twitter, kind of trying to get you to follow, but if you want to, go ahead. But last week, November 5, 6, 2 full days, we had a team of leaders go through 2 full days with us. And I'm going to cover the 3 opening slides as well as some of the summary reflections by attendees, and then fly into additional thoughts and advancements we had on top of it. So I think that might be helpful. So let me do it this way. So I'm going to go here. And you can see what I'm doing here. All right. Okay. So I have, I'm going to take you through rapidly 3 of the opening presentations that we whiteboarded. And so there's 3 of them. So one is the history of what changed, just to give you a quick sense, as in how to compete in the AI era, right? A lot has changed for human beings. The second was exactly what they're going to rep and try to experience in the Leadership Academy. And then the third slide is all around implementation, right? How do you actually take this intense training and then adopt and implement into your own life? Where a lot of times It's a very common thing. People go to offsites or people go into a workshop and then just claim, oh my God, that changed my life. But the reality for most people is, Michael would always say, it's not life-changing. It's at best 2-week changing. And sometimes days. You go right back to your old habits, old routines. And so how do you really make change? And so there is a different kind of work you have to do to make impact in your life. So like, why consume more information if you're not going to make impact, right? Okay, so history of what changed really quick. I'm just going to give you the high level summary of this. And so if you want, you can look up more stuff, but the history of what's changed in every 100 years is a significant change in what happens to human beings, both at work and at school. So you can look at the org chart and how the org chart has changed from a command and control pyramid structure where very few people had high agency to drive and decide what to do. Most of the people were trained to follow the decisions of the leadership. And sometimes you can add incremental value, but that command and control structure actually came from the US military. So there's a whole body of work, 100 years, this is what kind of operated, versus a high agency org chart, which is now saying with technology, an individual can make more impact. What used to take thousands of people and maybe like half a dozen departments all needing to coordinate together to figure out how to do something can be now done by a single person using some of the technology and tools out there. So a vastly different change that's occurring very quick. The org chart's different. Strategic planning is different. Strategic planning used to be this massive focus on even documenting and writing 10-year plans, 5-year plans, 1-year plans, versus how do you move into a more of a continuous planning state. The information is changing so fast, so rapidly. How do you actually work in this continuous fashion, and how do you oscillate between planning to actually doing? I think a lot of people are too focused on just the one side. Well, things are changing so fast, I can't plan. You have a seat over here? So how do you instead focus on getting that oscillation of planning versus doing correctly and on a continuous basis? Our brain, in terms of how we use our brain, logical work was where most of our value was added. Those who provided the greatest demonstration of logical success. Sorry, the disadvantage is being in the kitchen, spillage everywhere. So give us 1 sec. So we don't short out all the cords. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So logical brain, right? Things that move, the logical brain thinks slower. I mean, every time you say, why don't you sleep on it? Yeah. Why don't you slow down, think about it, pause before you speak, you're applying logical brain. And logical brain is most effective when you're covering things that have certainty. And this is the entire schooling system is built this way. But to realize now that AI does that better than any human brain can do. So if you don't leverage AI for logical work, you're going to fall behind very quick. So then the value of a human being, and even I'm blanking on the name now, Joellen, yeah. Like as you move into a new career, thinking about how I want to train the new skills, not the old skills. If you start to go into what can I, read more of and memorize and summarize, you're going to see AI does that so much faster. You can use the AI as a tool. So the human skill is all around intuition. Intuition and the intuitive brain is very different. And you have to understand how it's different. It moves fast, and it is the best of navigating persistent uncertainty. Information, as in when there is not enough data to know what to do, to make a logical choice, the intuitive brain is actually the most effective. And we talked about how using the intuitive brain often requires you to say no phones, no computers, no documents. Mm-hmm. The minute you start turning to your phone, your computer, looking up something, reading a document, even looking at last week's notes or yesterday's notes, you're now triggering your logical brain. Mm-hmm. And so to understand that notion of off memory, kind of off memory, off of what you feel, go with it, what would you do? And then I like the slide at the very bottom, energy management. The old workday looks like this. You start the morning with highest energy. A lot of people will talk about how like the most important stuff has to happen in the morning because of it. As the day progresses, your energy gets lower and lower. By end of the day, you are just wiped. And you might try to recover some just by drinking coffee midday, and then you have issues sleeping at night and all this other stuff. Versus the new workday is how to oscillate energy, how to oscillate energy so you can find multiple peaks in a day. So this is what we covered in the academy. And then going a little bit into depth of what we did 2 full days. And it was interesting when someone who was here in the academy asked another individual who had happened to be in the academy 6 years ago, 2019, what the difference was observing Next Jump's Leadership Academy 6 years ago, so pre-COVID versus today. And the biggest shift is that Academy 6 years ago was showcasing and actually making transparent every way that we were teaching people how to train large teams of people in, giving feedback and having authentic conversations and processing, information.
It was to get the masses productive.
Yeah.
And that's what we were teaching, right? How do you get them? How do you mobilize the troops? I mean, we were trying to figure out how do you get everybody trained, everybody, right? Not just one person. You'd use one person as an example, but it was to get everybody trained, kind of like in a classroom, like you're using one example to train everyone, right? I mean, that was the majority of our.
Versus the shift here was so focused on how to get one individual person productive. We had them experience brainstorming and trying to solve difficult problems in groups of 6, in groups of 2, all the way to solo, in all different techniques. And so what you're seeing on the chart is the new org chart that I love to think about is self to mission. So it's not even people to mission, it's not team to mission, it's self to mission. Self to mission first and foremost. What comes later will become how do you add teammates, how do you add other tools like AI. But first and foremost, self to mission. And we took this notion of how to think of mission from video gaming. So video games usually have what they call an easy mode, normal mode, hard mode, or insane mode. We tend to want to gravitate, often when things get difficult at work, to easy and normal tasks. But what you're finding very fast is companies are laying off like crazy, and companies are not looking for people who are masters of doing easy and normal tasks. They are in desperate need of people who can attack hard missions, insane missions. Insane that feels impossible, not impossible, but feels impossible. And so the notion of self to hard and insane missions becomes probably some of the biggest things that we spend time in. At the very bottom, the 4 orange boxes, this is what they repped in the 2 days. They repped intuition and how a lot of us fear intuition because it's flawed. It's kind of that whole notion of intuition, emotions, protective and destructive. How do we actually move from that thought to like thinking of it as, wait, that's where the gold is. It's where you can navigate uncertainty. So we were saying, a lot of people say, how do you hone your intuition? How do I make my instincts better? It is a trainable skill. And yes, it starts flawed for most of us, but it's trainable. But intuition has to be combined with the right energy. And so we spend a lot of time talking about how to generate the right energy for intuition. And then on the side of mission, this notion of visceral drafting versus visceral reacting. Visceral drafting, the more you do it, you become easier to understand. A lot of people will talk about this notion of thinking out loud or thinking in public. A lot of us struggle to do that, right? Can you brainstorm in front of a lot of people? Like, can you actually think out loud what you're really thinking? You think of, what was that show, American Idol? People love the judges like Simon Cowell, or who are comfortable actually thinking out loud, viscerally sharing what their thoughts are. And then you see like Paula Abdul, or you see the other extreme where everything is just niceness. They're so cautious of truly being themselves. Visceral drafting is the extreme end of being yourself, applying your intuition, but ideally on insane and hard mode ideas. And this question of what do you want to do, right? The hardest things in your life, the most insane mission, what do you want to do? And being comfortable that at best, you're going to be able to formulate a 50% idea. So not 100%, not 80%, because there's so many moving variables and so much uncertainty, starting to get comfortable that at best, it's being able to share a 50% idea.
Because like at best to 50% is kind of a different frame, or so you think, oh, at best I would have like 100% idea,
right.
But like that's actually a different goalpost.
It's starting to realize there are way too many variables that move too fast.
Yeah.
That if you actually think you have 80, 90, 100%, it generally, so it means one of two things. One is it could be an easy project. So an easy project or a normal project, that's possible. But you don't really get promoted. You don't get, value for solving easy things. Easy things, there's a lot of documentation, a lot of literature. Usually it can be done, and very soon by robots. And we had this whole discussion about, the AI move and plumbers and whatnot, and everyone's saying you should all go to, trade schools now. I have a very strong reaction that is going to be the worst mistake you can make. That by the time you graduate, you're going to see the Tesla robots or some other robot features using AI as a brain would have now figured out how to do that work. Like if you go to plumbing school, how rigorous is the training? To the point where a computer couldn't figure out what to do, diagnose what you figured out in, plumbing school and then apply through the robot. So just the caution of things are moving so fast. And generally speaking, if you are getting to say 80, 90, 100% on a hard or insane mission, you're making a lot of assumptions. And those assumptions you're going to see at half, if not more, will prove to be incorrect. And so what tends to occur for a lot of people is the more you invest in planning, and if you think you have it right, you will also find yourself more rigid. So when new and countering data shows up, we almost don't know how to deal with it because it's like, I planned this. And then if you shared your plan, you feel even more shameful or idiotic. So as a result of it, we tend to dig our heels in more. It gets worse and worse. But this, it can, that's a good point. Yeah. So Tom's saying it's an excuse not to start. A lot of us don't want to start because I don't know enough, right? And I need to figure more out. We're so used to kind of the old way of working, which is working in certainty, working on things that are actually more normal or easy. So planning became so valued, right? And if you can have a more detailed plan, reverse engineered, people thought you were brilliant.
Right. You feel like you're trying to counter that uncertainty if you plan for like everything. Then if something happens, I have a plan for that.
Yeah.
But like you can't actually
Plan
control.
B, plan C.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just like you have multiple plans.
Yeah, it's like the control part. Nicole's saying planning is the need to be in control. So it's like, I feel like you can reduce the variables, you'll feel calmer.
So we'll talk about that a lot. So planning, I like that. Planning is the need to be in control.
Yeah.
And it is something that we all desire, right? We all desire more control in our life. And here's the real sort of wake up call. You can't anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think you are, you're about to get really effed up, right? If you think you're in control and you planned well, I'm like, you're going to be in for a real brutal, like sort of wake up call, right? Like F you up with some truth kind of notion. So visceral drafting is one, but visceral reacting. The notion that when you hear some idea, someone speak, our mind is reacting instantly, and it doesn't have to be logical. You said this, and it made me think of all these things, but it doesn't have to be like, well,
a direct response to what you just said.
Yes.
It might have made me think of something else. When people say, "Ooh, maybe I shouldn't say that," right? I should just react to what you just said. Well, no, it made me think of this. Most people won't share that.
And what ends up happening on intuition is these tangential thoughts and ideas. When you start putting them on the table rapidly, it might seem like it doesn't connect, but it's amazing how the human brain is problem solving always. So you will find a way to connect. But the notion of human beings reacting viscerally together is what creates good thinking in hard, insane projects in today's uncertain world. So we then went into implementation. How do you integrate this into your life? And the notion of most things when you want to do something requires a level of intensity. If you want to get in shape, and it could occur from a good or bad. You could sign up for the marathon. And the act of actually that intense sign up might make you do something. Or you can get the stomach bug, lose weight. A lot of times good training, something intense you experience gives you the momentum that actually leads you then into move to this weekly routine. But what's hard for people to understand, and we're so busy now, like if you look on the internet and whatnot, everyone's sharing like, their habits and routines, and here's the 1, 2, 3. But you have to recognize you must play like the biggest authoring role in self-engineering your weekly routine. Nobody can generate your weekly, like when you're a child, by the way, your parent can create the weekly routine for you. But even then, as a child, you try to break it everywhere, right? They have rules of bedtime and this and what order, but this notion of you have to understand your own routine, and then you have to constantly be self-engineering your routine. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can share on this topic alone. What's interesting is over the years, there was an interesting data point that anything organic, if you try to change too much too fast, it's rejected. So if you think of living organisms versus machines, and the rule that came out through biology was anything organic usually can only change 2% to start. 2% equates to around 1 hour a week. So 2% to start. If you change more than 2%, you will see rejection. You will see that you'll have false starts and then crash. So some people manage, because if you like find out that, oh my God, like I'm really sick, cancer, heart attack, whatnot, you might go and more aggressively force yourself to change your routine. But minus those extreme data points, most people can only start with a 2% change. There's a whole discussion we had around when you find a training partner, you can actually accelerate the amount of change you can actually create, but that's a whole different discussion. But must be self-engineered. So 2 guiding principles to help. Intuition, you know why you can feel it, is you can feel an imbalance. And imbalance is not bad. And I think this is one of the common mistakes people make. People believe an imbalance is bad, so I'm going to try to stay as square in the middle as possible, versus living life is getting imbalanced. So I think of like being on a boat, and if the boat was small enough, I can run to one side and the boat feels like it's going to tip, and I have to run to the other side. And the act of actually oscillating energy is that going from one side to the other side, and it can feel like you might flip the boat or fall off, versus people will say, well, it's a lot safer to stay kind of right in the middle, right? Or take a tiny step to the right, tiny step to the left. And that notion of constraining your physical movement to constraining your mental movement actually makes you start to lose your ability to like live, to act, to think. And so it's counterintuitive that you should go after being imbalanced, but you have to also know when you have to start correcting. So there's different imbalances we put. Maybe I'm focused too much on growing myself, I have to focus more on mission, or the other way around. It could be too much pessimism or too much optimism, too much internally focused. I'm not meeting other people. I'm just working from home and kind of listening to like videos and Zooms. I need to go and connect with people externally. It could be clients, it could be new prospects. I'm spending too much time with, like existing clients. I need new clients, or I'm spending too much time with people who are just clients, but I need to talk to people who don't even want. So all different balances, mind, body, stress recovery, which then went into looking at energy oscillations. And this is the first time we mapped out, and I think Laura's putting together a much more detailed map of stress and recovery. A human being living should be oscillating up and down. And Jim Lear used to always say, whenever you see a flat line for how human beings are living, you go to the hospital, you see a monitor hooked up to a human being, and you see a flat line, it's over. Living is going up and down. And so when you see when they kind of flatline and then they take those electric charges and wake them back up, it starts beeping faster and higher when they're more healthy. And so we mapped out different physical ways to generate stress, but also physical ways to generate the flip side, which is recover. And so this is the piece we covered. And everyone got to experience, brainstorming in a group of 6 is going to be much more stressful than brainstorming with just 2 people. But what you'll find is that you need the stress. And one of the more counterintuitive things was training yourself to go to stress first before recovery. A common mistake is we think, I don't have the energy to push that hard, so I'm going to calm down first. I'm going to first, go to 2 people, and then I'm going to build the courage to go to 6. But if you instead charge and start with 6 people, 6 being a larger group.
Just bring something up that was interesting, actually, in the academy last week. And then Greg had a comment, we can maybe ask him, but it's interesting. I was just thinking, Suo, I saw I guess it was Thursday morning, second day of the academy, in the elevator. And she's like, man, I only got like 4.5 hours of sleep. I was like, me too. I was exhausted, right? So that feeling of, oh God, and she said, I guess, and I said, "Ooh, maybe we can get Sylvie to do the sound bath." I was kind of teasing, but like this idea of like, we need a nap, we're exhausted. And so your first reaction was, that's not going to happen. We're probably going to have to plunge, right? We're probably going to have to jump in. It's probably going to, like, we're going to do the opposite, right? We're going to go high. We're going to go into like, we're going to have to push, right? Like we're exhausted.
So I have a bad brand.
But it was good. But
Drill Sergeant Charlie's going to make us
in the
plunge.
past, I think that would have been, I mean, maybe I'm going off a tangent, but in our former academies, pre all this work, I could see somebody say something like that to me in the elevator and say, I'm exhausted. I really think we need to take care and we need to take a nap and we need to, and almost kind of make me feel bad, like we're not giving people a chance to recover or whatever. And I'd probably run to you 10 years ago, but I think people really need, instead though, because you experienced what it felt like to actually go higher and then have good ideas and thinking and your business impact and whatnot, you said to me, maybe we plunge. And I kind of had like a, holy shit, that's kind of impressive, right? Because like my first reaction a little bit was like, I am exhausted. You know what I mean? It's like,
but you need,
but yes. And yet I know we need, but it was fascinating. So when we came in, I'll admit I had a little bit of like a low and sort of figuring out how am I going to get through this day? We have a long day. It ended with our Mark Brackett talk. We had 250 people coming. I thought, it's going to be such a long day. It's already been a really long week. We work 7 days a week now. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how I'm going to get through today. So, but Charlie kicks it off. And here's something really interesting. And because actually we have on here a lot of physical things you can do, meeting with more people, you're sitting or you're standing, your eye to eye, cold plunges, weights, loud music. One of the most counterintuitive elements at the top is authenticity. So Charlie started off, I felt like very authentic. I can't actually remember, Charlie, what you started talking about.
Yeah.
But then it triggered my authenticity. I started sharing some of the stuff in our walk home the night before that was, putting me in my head a little bit, overthinking all the things we naturally do, anxiety, whatever it is. And then I started sharing some of the things that I was struggling with and that I was trying to overcome in the academy. And that hour and a half opening, I felt like I was like alive. I felt like I may as well have I could have just had taken a plunge, but I didn't need a plunge. Isn't that interesting? Because you've said that to me before, where like, if you tap your own authenticity, it can give you energy.
Yeah.
But it is weird. It can happen like that. Like you can feel someone else's authenticity and you're like, ooh, and then you share yours and all of a sudden you're like, I feel like awake, like super awake and alive,
Yeah,
right?
it has to do with like all the chemicals that you're producing in your brain.
Dopamine, adrenaline, all the good things.
But the notion
You can
of,
do it without having to do something physical.
but think of authenticity in stress. What does that look like? Being authentic to a large group of people. That's what creates stress. Being authentic just by yourself, writing my own notes, journaling, there's not a lot of stress. No one gets to see and judge you. You go to one person, not a lot of stress. Go to a larger group, very stressful. And so if you're able to push there, and this is the part where that stress, sometimes it feels like shit. Nobody else was. I was the only one. That happens a lot. Yeah. Right.
Then
and
I'm
so,
like, why was I
but
just for the
here's the counterintuitive part about stress.
Yeah.
So you do that in a large group of people, nobody reacted, no one responded. So you feel like kind of raw, vulnerable, almost like exposed. You feel like shit, right?
Yeah.
And the thinking is they now know all this crap on me and I know nothing, right? Because nobody else kind of exposed and I feel like shit. Now, the reality is most people won't remember what the hell you said.
Right.
And they have their own issues. And the reason why they can't be authentic is they're in their head typically.
Right.
But for yourself, you do that. You took a shot. It was stressful. No. Then you go, say, with one person and you have an authentic conversation. It's so much easier because you hit stress first. Being authentic with a large group is so much harder that afterwards, immediately following, go authentic with one other person, it'll flow with such ease. So that's the notion of what the stress will do. It can often generate the flip side, which is your intuition comes alive. Now, not in stress, but in recovery. So there's a nuance on this that we spend a lot of time covering. Just really quick, I was gonna give a sense of some of the, if you can see this, or you know, I don't have to go through all this, but I'm just gonna show you some of, so all the Academy attendees write a reflection of kind of their experience. And we send them, sleep on it overnight, and by the next day or the weekend, send us kind of your top takeaways. And then we put it into our AI coach and summarize all these reflections. And this is what it said, intuition as a trainable skill. And this is perhaps the most mind-shifting concept for most participants. I think this notion of understanding that you can train intuition, and they felt it. I think they felt their own intuition not only get exposed and tapped into, but improving in the course of the academy. The physics of energy and oscillations, so this came up a lot, right? That, sorry, where is it? Yeah, the physics of energy and oscillation. And I think this theme that showed up a lot was that something physical is actually more mental than you think. And something mental can be actually triggered by physical. And so that notion of like the mind body truly is more connected, I think, than people ever think. Yeah, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, vulnerability as an accelerant, which is what you're talking about, the authenticity, right? Kind of mission first. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Power of constraints. And this is interesting. And I put a little note over here on this, that a lot of people think that if I need to be, like creative and whatnot, I need a lot of time. And to actually be challenged to do it with even like whether it's using paint with brainstorming in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, you go to the cold plunge and you can't stay in more than 5 minutes. Yet most of the rapid talking occurs in 1 to 2 minutes. And it was kind of liberating in many ways for people to see the constraint actually produced a different level of work, a different level of engagement. And so I shared in here, there's a lesson years ago from one of the biggest money managers in the world. And he had shared all the investments they ever made historically. They found that all the companies who had a lot of capital, a lot of money, never did very well. They never innovated. What most companies do is being metrics obsessed. They take something that works okay, mediocre, and they just scale mediocrity. So the entire company over time is just a giant ball of mediocrity. Versus all the companies who didn't have enough capital were forced to innovate. And through that forced innovation, under that constraint, are the only places they saw innovation. So this notion of constraint is actually what generates innovation. So there's many ways where we use time as a constraint, but there are other ways to use different tools to create innovation.
Really quick, does it have to do with like having the risk is higher or lower? Because if you have like a company that has a ton of money, the risk is maybe lower than if you have, so it's higher than if you have a company that has no money, your risk is I'm trying to say something. Exactly.
One of the best examples. Well, one of the best examples people always use is Jeff Bezos when he built the Kindle.
Right.
He would talk about I'm going to kill my own business before someone kills my business. So the most exceptional leaders will do the opposite of what you're saying.
Okay.
Right. But most people, as you do succeed, they're very bad risk takers. And at the same time, they tend to play safe. And as a result of it, they end up going out of business. Michael Dell was interviewed doing very similar things that he would talk about and explain to all his staff, like, here's this company, and explain how this company is going to put them out of business, right? And would describe in a lot of detail and say that Dell needs to be that company so that we put ourselves out of business. Right. So the best ones stay alive this way. Most big companies end up eventually going out of business. So the best ones are pushing the envelope of innovating. And I think once again, the world's moved faster. And it shows up even looking at the highest valued companies in the world. The speed that they're making it to the top and disappearing is faster than ever before. And we had shown this before COVID. ExxonMobil was the top, highest valued company for like 90 years. And then in a course of a year, it dropped from, number one to like out of the top 10. And then I think months later, it like fell off the S&P 500. I mean, it was insane how fast the list was changing. And any study that's done shows that anybody who becomes number one was losing that spot faster than it ever did. And so this movement, which is saying something has changed, and that's the whole notion of the history of the world. When you look at it, something has changed, which is why an org chart that was built for slow and steady is vastly different than an org chart that's not built that way. And we used to talk about org charts built like an elephant versus a cheetah. If you look at the bone structure of an elephant, it's built to move slow and steady, which is what an org chart is and how companies are organized. The bone structure of a cheetah is built very different to be fast and agile, and darting and moving in different ways. And in fact, they even say a cheetah's heart, if it doesn't stop running, it can actually explode. The amount of energy it applies is so high that the heart will explode, which is why they have to stop at some point. And so that notion of kind of oscillating.
It's interesting to think the big companies like an elephant is meant to go slow and steady. But that's a protective thing where bureaucracy is there for a reason to prevent them from making really big changes too fast that could implode them, right? I mean, it's actually built deliberately, right? I feel like to make things run a little bit slower and more secure, but now it's like the complete opposite.
I feel like
you need.
Yeah.
So this really quick, this is the summary. What made the Academy different? It was more selfish, but in the best way. It was focused on individual hard problems. Everyone came with some of the biggest challenges to solve for themselves. There were a lot of comments that talked about how I've been working on this problem for months. In 2 days, I covered 70, 80% of like the problem in 2 days that I've been trying to solve for months. A lot of progress happening very fast. Immediate application, integration of body mind, high buy-in from the group, practical tools, using food as a tool, balance, structure, experimentation. And then the meta lesson wasn't about learning concept. It was about experiencing transformation. It proved its own thesis. When you engineer the right environment, physical space, emotional safety, strategic oscillation, diverse perspectives, getting visceral reaction to your business or mission problem from people that know nothing about you or nothing about the industry you work in, and seeing that through the interaction viscerally, right? Not like the whole optics-based business school jargon analysis, but their visceral reaction with speed on your business plan. It's like an artist is getting feedback from someone in the fashion industry, feedback from someone who is in, like the tech industry, finance industry, totally different fields, and having breakthroughs. That was very cool. So kind of seeing all of that come alive. So let me move back to this. So I want to build on this. So we asked some of the Academy attendees to come as well, because what ends up happening is after the Academy, we end up not only teaching, talking, even that evening, there was 250 additional guests who came. They're asking what's happening as you're explaining. New thinking iterations go on. And so in the course of the week, Megan and I wrote up quite a bit of sort of what to do more of. So we wanted to add on to that. So for those of you, for like the slides there, if you want, go on Twitter or X, or you can go on Instagram, or like there's many places we can give you more stuff. But I wanted to cover one thing really quick, and I apologize, it's my messy handwritten notes. I wanted to cover really quick 2 pieces, and I'll explain to you what's on the sheet. It was talking about, when we say VX, future outlook, and one of the big sort of harder projects we have is this notion of using the company name. What is the next jump in community? As in, like, the next way to build community. People think community, they might think churches, they might think neighborhoods, but what is the next jump in community in this new age of AI and digital and work from home and Zoom and everything that's going on? Like, what is that next jump in community? And in the same way, we took the same term and said, what is the next jump in ventures? And ventures representing an asset, building an asset. There's a lot of gig workers now, more than ever before. Big companies are laying off. But what ends up happening is then you might not have a 401k. You might not have a pension. What happens in terms of building an asset for you so that, most people are working and getting paid by the hour? But what happens when I get to a place where I can't do that work? Now, it might be because of you're a fitness trainer, or it might be because of, and some people can work on whatever their project forever, but a lot of jobs have that, and you're getting paid, let's see, by the hour. But how do I, in parallel, build an asset that can build and accumulate? And so playing off this term of it takes a village to raise a child, I think people have heard that phrase. We believe it takes a community to also generate success, whether it's for a solo entrepreneur or whether it is for a leader in a large organization. And we shared this notion of success has to be built for an individual human being, not by going money first, right? Most people say, give me money. If I have a company, I first need to raise money. And then it's like, I need introductions if I can't get money. And then do you have any advice for me? How do you flip this equation, which is why AIC represents advice or knowledge then it's introductions, and then to capital. And this is the right way to build most things in this order. And so startups all the way to large enterprises. So, Greg, who runs our business one, Perks at Work, one of our clients is NVIDIA. So he had gone and visited them. And we were saying that the work we do on kind of helping human beings perform better, it can help a startup or it can help a large enterprise the size of NVIDIA. But to actually build this so that there are teams of people training together, introductions is in the network of people matters, but then in capital, so startup equity, right? So we have a lot of people that also can contribute to writing checks to own startup equity, but also large enterprises as we do engagements, helping them on leadership to take 10, maybe 20, up to 50% of our payment in equity. A lot of them are public stocks, and building an asset where our community is helping sort of swarm and come alive and help, whether it's, it could be Jensen and his leadership team do better. It could be helping, 305 startup do better. And as they do, there's a way to take a percentage of this asset that builds in public equity, startup equity. So this is a concept that we're developing. We had discussions on this because the world's changed a lot in several different ways. And we're having this discussion with some people this week where, the people say PR is dead, media is dead, you have to build your own brand. People talk about the physical office the way it used to be is dead. So how do you build office now? Capital, the way that money was the driver, almost like you couldn't start anything without money. That's no longer true. Most people are actually working out of their homes, right? And using just a laptop and able to start big businesses. It's happening faster. So the role of capital has changed, and we've had sit-down dinners with people in the private equity venture capital world saying they can't compete by writing a check anymore. They have to bring incredibly greater value than writing a check. And so we believe this next jump in even ventures is kind of a better way to do this. Bring a community that can literally make someone come alive, not only in intense ways, but continuously, and generating the success which we then all take a piece of, through startup equity all the way to large company equity. One of the other discussions we're talking about is college recruiting and hiring, we believe, is dead. And that's happening very fast, but building community, we believe, is the new form of hiring, the new form of recruiting. And so there's a whole process there that we can go into as well. All the way down to the very bottom, we talk about TPs being training partners. On the left side, we mod 4, 5, 6 training modules for leadership. The first thing on mod, yes, totally separate thought.
Where's the thought about next jump community and next jump adventures? It's a different thought.
It's a different thought. We're talking about kind of future outlook. So this is intuition just being shared live here, right? How an individual first gets trained so that you can generate value using your mind. Through your brain and mind, you can generate value not only for yourself, but also to or for anyone. And the notion of you can generate it helping an optimist, you can generate helping a pessimist. But first and foremost, the self to mission before you can even apply it to others. When you get to a place of having a training partner, the analogy we used was bone broth, of protein absorption. A lot of us read a lot now of how much protein we have to eat, right?
Yeah.
Your like body weight in protein or grams, or like it's just an insane amount of protein. And Chef Danny taught a class showing a pretty interesting chart that there's an absorption rate of protein per hour. And so if you have too much protein, but your body can't absorb it anyway, it just spits it out as waste. It's a totally useless effort. But the number one thing that your body can absorb protein on is bone broth.
Right.
And so it's much easier for it to absorb and a higher amount of protein. And so we were saying a TP, a training partner, ultimately is the same as bone broth for knowledge. And when you think of learning and you think of the amount of information that is out there, and we're on this quest of just volume of knowledge and information, except it's not integrated into our life. It's like, who cares, right? It's like goes out in one ear, out the other, right? And
so you said before the 2% change, right? Anything organic can take 2% change to start. And so like from a protein point of view, you can only have so much to absorb it. But if you have a training partner, you can absorb more. Is what you're saying. Like
Yes.
you're kind of constantly.
So that's the place to build it.
Yeah.
where- So you can become better, greater, smarter.
Yeah.
Was it? Why can you? So, we didn't share this, no, the whole
No.
TP thing?
No.
So we'll teach a class on this. There's a whole class that so we did not add it
We got
here.
the analogy down.
Yes.
We feel like the bone broth analogy of the protein.
There's a lot in here,
Well,
so.
part of it is too, is you start to know each other really well, so the things that you, this is part of it,
Mhm.
the things that like I might be able to get away with you, which is in my automatic, I don't see it, who sees it, so now it's like, you're just,
So,
you're,
actually, I have the answer.
okay, go ahead.
No, so the answer is awareness. But, meaning,
It was it.
Mark,
Yes.
so it's very tied to what we're about to cover. So Mark Brackett, when he's written book Permission to Feel, now Dealing with Feelings, I think it's the same book, but different story. But he talked about when you feel these emotions that you don't know what to deal with, right? Like, but whether it's anxiety, whether it's worry and whatnot, what's the cure? What do you do? The antidote is awareness. Awareness is the antidote for so many things. And so what a training partner does, it gives you awareness faster because they are training with you the slightest things that you're doing wrong in the nuances, they can feel and they can see. And a good,
I'll say something, he'll hear it and be like, you sound a little meat when you're saying that, you sound excuses, like.
so what are you not telling?
And like, I might kind of know it, but I don't really want to talk about it, or I might feel it, but it's not, I can't, yeah, like I can't quite put like language around it.
There's a much greater degree of awareness because we all have blind spots. And the biggest place we have blind spots is in our weekly routines because it's so automated. It's where we can't see the most. But the notion of kind of being challenged in every detail as you go through, that's what a training partner will do that you will not get as well when you are working solo, which is why, by the way, we put mod 4 and 5 together. You have to watch the imbalance of working alone for too long. That if you have a weekly rhythm of actually interacting and colliding with other people, which is mod 5, you will see that it generates awareness because that is the same as getting feedback, getting reaction. We work too often without getting enough reaction. So as a result of it, we just go down a path that you're like, you might be thinking you're doing well until you really try to show real people, real customers, real users, and you find that actually they're totally confused at what we're talking about. So kind of going to this, I'm going to talk and build on what we did in the Leadership Academy. So I'm going to talk about one, because mission always first. And the reason why this matters is this. If you don't have mission and it's just learning for the sake of learning, you could get lost in becoming an armchair professor. And there's way too much information now. And you can get into becoming like, I don't want to use the word asshole, but like I kind of say asshole because they're like these intellectual debaters that just want to argue and just want to pontificate, right? I mean, I think in many ways politics gets there, but a lot of other things get there. Like, but when you have a mission that you're trying to accomplish, you will see that it filters naturally the discussion. It filters all the knowledge to does it matter, does it not? And yes, sometimes we have to explore, but it does a dramatic impact of reducing the intellectual bullshit that can occur in any discussion. So mission first, then it goes to self before it goes to others, right? So there's 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go through kind of, there's like 2 on the mission, 2 on self, 2 on others. And first and foremost, it's helping you build awareness of how it goes wrong. If you understand how it goes wrong, once again, you can just see the wrong more often. As a result of it, you just do less of it. I don't know if that makes sense. The power of awareness, and the perfect example is you hear about how bad alcohol could be, or how bad, say, like sugar is. When we're not aware, it goes into our automatic.
Yeah.
You know, I wake up and the first thing I want to do is pop some, donuts. And, I just get so automated into it that I just kind of pack donuts, and then there's always a donut available. But there's a lot of things in our automatic that occur, right? A lot of people will go into automatic after I come from work. I have a glass of scotch, right? And then, but one glass can go to 2 to 3 to.
It's bad. Like say you're finally aware, sugar is bad, alcohol is bad, even 1 drop, which I don't necessarily agree with. It's just now that you know it's bad, when you go to take it, you know it's bad, so, but at least you're aware, I'm doing it, and I decided I'm gonna do this for myself today, I'm gonna do it, right? But you're aware.
Awareness,
it's not good, right?
awareness
You're not
tempers it.
Huh?
Awareness tempers it. When you're not aware, you just do it without control.
Yeah, tempers
Right?
it.
And if you do it without control one day, which is sometimes going and partying, getting drunk, you don't do it second day in a row, third day in a row. Like this is the part. Awareness changes the way you behave in very subtle but important ways. And it shows up most in your automatics. So kind of taking this awareness, I started by first sharing, Greg sent this thing to me that this week, and to Megan and I liked it. It was around, I think it was a conversation Oprah had with the Dalai Lama, and shared this thing, right? A young man once asked a Taoist monk how to stop worrying. And so this was the monk's response. You worry because your mind is grasping for control. It tries to assert its power over powerless situations and aims to shield you from imagined dangers of the future. Powerless situations is because the future is not in your control. But we think, this is the planning and the over planning and the over worrying. We think if we can imagine every detail, we would actually be better prepared for the dangers into the future. But we can never see the future for what it will actually bring. And the best we can do is imagine, therefore worrying is your mind causing itself pain. So this was the first part. But then the second part was this: there exists one remedy for this affliction, and that is trust. But you must trust that you will meet the problems of the future the same way you have met and overcame the problems of the past. So yes, we experienced new problems, but we did okay. We did okay, and maybe sometimes we did pretty well. And so to trust that in the same way I will be able to adjust and actually be okay or manage through, that trust is very difficult to do. But problems themselves are inevitable, a natural part of life. Trust that you will overcome them, you will gain power over your worries. Now, these little memes and things, very cute, right? It's very good. But when it comes down to practice, you're like, okay, this is all good, but my problem's fucking real, right? And it's like, this is all good to watch in a show, but like, what do I do? So we'll talk kind of breaking it down into something much more real and tangible. So I think there's a couple of parts to this. One is overthinking. The human brain is made up of these three compartments. The present is actually much less than you think. Our mind only operates 10% in the present. 50% is the past. And then 40% is future outlook. Where overthinking shows up are two main areas. It occurs in remembering the past so much with regret. I call it over regret. You hope to have picked different forks in the past. And that overthinking of just regretting and regretting, God damn it, I should have picked that. And the more you do it, the worse it can get, because you can't change what's happened in the past, yet we will overthink it. The can't control is going to the future. Similar methodology. I'm just going to turn over to Megan. Did you put this?
Oh, well, this is like an advanced skill. This is so first off, the past versus the future is another way to look at, right? If you just look at the diagram, it's like a storm outside all of a sudden. But the past versus the future, and then there's the now. And the whole point is that you can't. I mean, I like how Kathy said it simple last night. In the past, you can't change it, and we're gonna get to like this mission impossible, but you can't change it. And in the future, you can't control it. And I think that is the hardest part. We actually can't change things we've done in the past, situations in the past, and we can't actually control what's going to happen in the future. So this advanced skill we talked about is that if you could actually take, did I build on this? We just pressed, if you could actually take the regret you feel from the past, some decision you didn't make or whatever happened, and then create future regret of the things that right here and now, because the challenge is if you could get more of your energy into the present right now, fully engage in, we're so wired to solve problems. We could take our intuition and find a way to march towards solving something that you're worried about in the future. But because we spend so much time in the past regretting, and Charlie's seen me do this, I struggle with this. This is like, I'm working on this now, to not take all of that into the present and just ruminate over it. And it gets mashed into the worries for the future. But if you think, you're really not spending any time trying to solve it. So an advanced skill is, I regret decisions I didn't, or things that happened in the past. I want to take that regret and create future regret. If I don't work on this now, I'm going to have this future regret of the time I have right now. I can make something happen. I can change something. So it's this idea of like, it's more of It's a skill of taking the things you didn't do and saying, but I have time right now. I have the next 2 weeks. I have the next 4 weeks. And you can chunk, you know, you can chunk time to say,
We'll cover that.
you're going to cover that.
Yeah.
But that's the idea, is that you could actually, you know, take that past regret and that future, and it's just such a waste of energy, and get it into right now, what you can do, and start marching towards, and you start to build momentum, as opposed to just wasting so much time in the past. But I'm saying all this, recognize this is hard to do. We're going to sort of break this down, right?
So, sorry, there's a lot on the slide, so it's going to just help me narrate through this. So first and foremost, think about the antidote. First and foremost is awareness. You have to recognize, if you are aware of how you're doing something wrong, it's amazing how you're able to fix it. Fix it by just the hesitant action in wrong things. You eat a donut with hesitation, it does wonders to eating it without even thought, just popping them in like pills, right? Like, so pills in the same way, right? I mean, ever since Danny's talked to us about even Motrin and everything else ruining your gut, you just, whenever I take a Motrin, I'm just more, I'm like, okay, I'm hurting my gut. So as a result of it, you might then eventually do other things like fermenting cabbage and what to replace, but you just wouldn't do it without thought. It's without thought that actually creates most issues. So the antidote being awareness. So first and foremost, going to mission first, number one. Sorry, the colors are hard to see. We created a category called Mission Impossible. So there's easy, normal, hard, insane. Mission Impossible, of course, is something that we will naturally do. Overthinking, overworrying. Things in the past I can't change, but I'm trying to change it, is Mission Impossible. Things in the future I can't control, but I'm trying to control it, is another version of Mission Impossible. And to recognize that when you won't know Mission Impossible until you actually try. And the more you try, but it's now, hopefully after this class, you'll get more aware of how Mission Impossible shows up. And the reason I put A and B is this. I always like to think you have two levers you can play. You can play the lever of how to improve and fix your mission, but you can also put the lever of how to upgrade yourself. So, and I put A purposely first. You want to try to do mission, and when you can't, you have to go to self. So stay with me for this. So I'm going to try to uncover my notes in here. So I started with mission, and this is what happens in mission. So why you can't solve and make progress in mission typically shows up in one of two ways. One is, you know, when stuff scares you so much and you say, I can't look at it, I can't talk about it. If you can't look at it and you can't talk about what the challenge is, you're not going to be able to solve it. It's just recognizing that. And so the way I look at it, kind of, if you think of going into a valley of challenge, you're not able to see rock bottom. You're not able to get to rock bottom. So we eject, and why I put the red, you know, or the pink line over here, we eject right here. So how to get myself to push through to be able to see rock bottom is you'll only know you're at rock bottom because the other side won't feel like going down. You will start to feel lighter because it's not worse. It's like the notion of when you're upset and you're like bordering on tears, but you're not crying. Once you've had enough crying, you'll see there's no more tears. And someone will say, you know what, there's some more bad news. And be like, okay. You'll see that your emotions will act differently. So the notion of we can't look, we can't talk about it, that means, of course, you can't make progress on it. So it's now that exists where you'll have to go left. As this happens and you kind of tilt yourself and whatnot, you'll have to go left. The other part I talked about here is VD stands for visceral drafting. VR is visceral reacting. The red or the pink circles are the wrong ways. We don't start the day visceral drafting. We start the day by viscerally reacting, which means we're reacting to email. We're reacting to, you know, my notes from yesterday, social media. We start the day the wrong way. But when you start to try to visceral draft, as in share my intuition, how does my mind, having slept, solve this difficult problem? As you get stuck, we tend to go and say, you know what, maybe I'll just get rid of some tactical things. I got things to check off my to-do list, things that are more clear and easy to do. And so the other mistake we make is when we struggle with visceral drafting, right? We go to like a tactical downgrade. You go to an easier mission or try to check off something before you know, your whole best energy is used just trying to accomplish checklists of stuff that you'll see ultimately sum up to producing very little movement in what you need to accomplish. So these are two ways it goes wrong. But as you try to do this, you'll get stuck, right? Because this is the part, the untrained mind tends to go towards Mission Impossible. So the way it gets stuck And one way to actually see that is on the left side. So we did all this work with this we call them doc, but we were measuring blood pressure and whatnot, and we're able to see that human beings fall into 3 categories. It's survival mode or surviving, thriving, and startled. When you're on tilt is when we do not have control over emotions. When you can't think, right? We tend to fall somewhere oscillating between surviving and startled. So when you think of like kind of in survival mode, you're just stuck. You're just stuck. It almost feels like being in quicksand. You can't move. Cement boots, quicksand, and then something happens. It might piss you off, or you might feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna die about a business or whatever it might be, and then you do a startled action. Survival mode and startled actions tend to usually be really bad decisions. And starting to recognize when I'm in that state. Like, that state when you go to a haunted house and someone pops out, you're like, ah, like that's startled. Startled mental thinking, just like startled physical reacting, will likely break things. So to recognize that, and it's odd because people say you don't act, you don't do enough. Well, you can see yourself startled act, but it tends to come on the other side of surviving. So when you go down, there are 2 things that show up. And so this is helping you build awareness. The over worry, right? As in so when you think of overthinking, the over worry we talked about with the monk, you can't control the future. And one of the ways that you can see how this happens is we think too far out. When I say too far out, usually it's time-based, but oftentimes there usually is like dozens, if not hundreds of things that must happen before that happens. So when I'm spending time too far out, I'm not realizing there's many variables that I am assuming. This has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen before I get to thinking about what will happen at that point. Thinking too far out, which could be many steps in, before it gets there, hundreds of steps oftentimes, or so over worrying shows up that way. Over regretting is when you feel yourself in your mind, when you wake up, when you think about it, when you're beating yourself up about a past decision, and you see it kind of revisited in your mind over and over again. You're like, God, I made the wrong choice. God, I made the wrong choice. If I made the right choice, everything would be easier. And usually that's not true. Even if you made the other choice, you don't know what would have happened. But we spend time thinking it would have been easier. In the same way, when we think about the future, there's some belief that I can get it solved if I can just kind of get ready for it. And that's the whole monk story with worrying of the future and things you can't control. Same thing happens with things you can't change anymore. You took a different fork, and usually the fork you wish you had taken is not as perfect as you think it is either. So if you find yourself doing that, it's one way to kind of start to recognize it and see it, explain it, expose it. That's awareness. Awareness often is being able to explain what's happening, and not only explain, but then expose it to another human being. And the act of doing that takes courage, but it is the act of doing that you will be able to slow it down and see what's happening. The second thing that tends to happen on the self side when you're doing Mission Impossible is you have facts of what happened, and then you have predictions. Predictions can also be guesses or opinions. You mash it together, and there's no pause in between. It's like stuff that's happened and the stuff that's going to happen next. In one phrase, you kind of blend all of it with the same energy and just kind of it's like a tumbleweed of facts and predictions all in one, and boom. If you find yourself doing that, which a lot of people do, you start to realize, I'm unable to attack Mission because I'm either overthinking, which is the worry, or over regret, or I'm not separating out what actually are the facts versus what are my guesses, opinions, predictions. And so there's no pause in between. I don't know if this helps a little bit, but I'll give you sort of some of the advanced. Yeah. No? Sorry. No, share.
Yeah, no. I was just trying to think of really examples of that. I'm like, wait, in my head, we go there or not go there. But I was just thinking about the past stuff. Do we talk about this in Leadership Academy? Baggage, trauma, all those things. You think it's not impacting. I could say, okay, if I have trauma from something with my kids, it's not going to impact my work, what I'm doing here. But it does because it rhymes, the big ones rhyme, which might just be beating self up for decisions but something might trigger I mean, I have nothing with my kids right now, but like something that is said might make me think, it's kind of the visceral reaction might make me think of a decision I made or something that happened to me. And now you're like off in that, off in like that
So
land.
once the hand sanitizer, everyone.
Yeah, it's like what's happening, like during COVID, everybody did it, yeah. But yeah, there's something like you trail off into something and then you realize, wait a minute, why is that? So, because I have a little phrase on my thing that my baggage is destroying me, like baggage destroys you, right?
Mhm.
It destroys future decision. It destroys good thinking because you're
I
pulling.
always think of it as bad experiences exist in all our lives. It's
Yeah, because you know what, it's this little.
Oh.
Oh, so
Go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna just add, I really agree with it, kind of Megan, what you're saying on the baggage. One, I almost feel it's the opposite of regret, but maybe it's not, but is because I struggle less on the regret piece, maybe too little sometimes, but is like the baggage that where you're putting blame, and it may be blame on the situation, it may be blame on others, and it like you may not even like be aware of the emotion you're tying to that, and so you can lead to real giant blind spots of the baggage you have. And certainly not then look at the options and choices you have going forward. And it almost, when you predict going forward, you get to like a why bother space. So like it's a thesis, but like I'm starting to notice when my emotions are kind of like, why bother, to like peel back to like maybe where have some blaming piece that like I'm not, like I haven't exposed it.
Yeah, I think the past actually has shame and blame in it, which is why, you know, and because we mash it up into one big ball, we might think we're just blaming someone, but we're like, no, I got some stuff in there that doesn't feel good and I don't want to talk about it. And I'm blaming some people and things and I don't want to talk about that either, right? Like it has both.
I think when I think about the past, right, there's a lot of people who regret a fork that, God, if I had taken that fork, if I'd taken that plan B or that other fork, things would have worked out.
Yes.
And there are a couple things that happen. One is it's a huge assumption that things would have worked out.
Yeah.
That is a huge assumption versus like, no, it would have been another windy path that leads to some other place. And you'd have to figure out how to navigate all the decisions that happen there. So it's usually not quite as clean as people think. But the amount of energy we spent, like it's supposed to be fully engaged in what's here now. We're going back and we're just replaying those scenarios and thinking that everything that's difficult now would be easier if I'd taken that fork. So there are some people who, when it comes to baggage, decide that it's better to not think about it. But of course, our subconscious mind, it's almost like you can either be upfront about it and be honest and just be a ton of worry out, or you can act like nothing bothers me. But it's like everyone around you is like, well, Greg, you didn't do that, and then you don't, it's like you can tell when it's in there because you don't like it when someone brings it up. Yes, you go quiet, or you do that look that Greg does when he sees vegetables on his plate. That like that kind of.
Move it away.
But meaning,
back from the table.
And so that notion of like, that when you can't look at a problem, right, even if it's in the past, that means it's got a hold of you, right? So that notion of like, go ahead, Franz, you had a question? No, please go ahead.
Some level of awareness that is wrapped up in understanding the past.
So I don't know if can you guys hear that on the Zoom? No. So Florence was asking, isn't there some level of awareness and understanding the past, like awareness and benefit?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I put the word over regret, over worry. Like there's lessons in the past, absolutely. Just like there's value in thinking into the future and it lets us plan. It's the lack of control in this word over. Right? Yeah. And you can see it more as you try to attack difficult stuff. This is where the mission part comes in. When you try to do something difficult, this is before anyone's direction, but you try to do it yourself. It's like your mind will feel like it's almost like, God damn it, this would have been easier if I had done that before, right? This would have been easier if I didn't quit my job. It would have been easier if I stayed a little bit longer and I got that bonus, or it would have been easier. Like there could be a bunch of different things. And there are ways that we can just get really upset at the wrong fork in the past, and you can see how that robs from the present. That's not healthy. That's not good. But to take no lessons from the past and living kind of like yesterday happened, I forget it. Like the reality is you can act like you forgot it. Your intuition hasn't. It's stored in you and your body knows it too. And so one way you can tell for someone who acts like, you know what, I just live for today, forget the past, you just have to talk about some difficult topics of theirs and challenge them a little bit. And usually they tend to be very bad at being authentic and vulnerable, but when they are, challenge them and you'll see all kinds of like Greg with the vegetables in the plate look. That like very uncomfortable, avoid kind of look. Or there are people who just keep repeating it. And the notion of being aware that
That's not helping me anymore.
I'm either repeating something that I cannot change, and I'm replaying it too much, right? And it's happening when I wake up, right? Which is something that you can start to become more aware of. And when you do, that is actually the antidote. The other part is like, whenever someone brings it up or whenever anything brings it up, I get like that uncomfortable feeling that's the whole, I can't look at it, I can't talk about it. You can also be aware of that. Yeah, it's like a cue of being able to see what the bad version of you looks like. It's like the first time you drank alcohol, you probably weren't, but you quickly get to a place, okay, I know when I'm sloppy. Like you start to become aware of it. And when the act of being aware solves most of the problems. So you had a question?
I was going to share sort of an example because this is the baggage and awareness and all that. So
hey, Ezra, can you hear? If you can't hear, just give us a thumbs down. I can see you.
I can hear.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sitting close enough. I'll speak a little bit louder too. So this, I share that, you know, I was like conflict averse.
Yeah.
Right. And then this has been throughout all my life, actually, and especially comes up in interpersonal relationship. And Florence and I, we had an event and we had like our one-on-one over like gin, tapas, and red wine, and we were doing the shoulder to shoulder walk to the subway. And we're like, oh, this is great. So I had this awareness. I'm like, oh, this is coming from childhood upbringing.
Yeah.
My father was a very angry man.
Yeah.
And so you learn to keep peace.
Right.
Right? You don't bring up conflict because you're just gonna get slapped in the face. And so that was the first time I was like, oh shit, this is where it came from. Right? And so as an adult, I don't need that anymore.
Right.
And so now there's the awareness and I can release that. Right?
Yes.
And
That's healthy and that's great.
Yeah.
Now, if you keep waking up being angry at your dad, right? And angry at the choices you didn't make, it gets to a place where it's no longer adding value. It's actually burning mental battery. So you have real problems to solve now. And for you to realize, oh my God, that's where it came from. But now like I can make different choices. But if I keep going back, and usually when the problem is hard, the mission problem is hard, is when we look to blame, right? When the mission problem is hard is when we like.
That became programming. It's in my subconscious, right? It's been like, I don't know, decades.
Yes.
And so that was actually big for me. And I probably didn't share this, but I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where that coming from?
Let's go.
Yeah. And it's like been with me, you know, all my life. But yeah.
We're wired for not having conflict. We're wired to get along and be part of the tribe and not create conflict.
But
your
I do
point is that you could overdo that, and the more you think about that.
And what
You're
I'm
not,
saying is
but
where
you
it
could.
comes up when overdone is
It's
when the mission is hard.
Yeah.
And when you're banging your head against the mission, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like I can't solve this.
That's what
Now it goes into a couple different directions. One is like, you know, well, this mission must be impossible, right? Or the part that people want to do is kind of blame forks in the past or things in the past. And those tend to kind of do neither. You don't make any progress. And so you waste a day, you waste a week, you waste a month. And so just to kind of understand sort of where things go wrong, like the awareness factor of the wrong. Wait, here, let me add a couple more things and then we can move on to this. So there are two advanced skills when it comes to the self side. And so I'll explain kind of what the A and the B mean. So one is if you have something you're worrying about in the future, and if you think of this A has kind of like there's like three parts. think of the very, very right being the future, right? That you're worrying about. Instead of looking at the future, say 6 months out, or even 6 weeks out, you break it into 3 parts: 2 months, 2 months, 2 months. And instead of focusing on the very last data point, which is 6 months out, you focus 2 months out from now, as in after the first third. Imagine getting to that day, the beginning of the second, of the 2 months, right? So like in this case, imagine being on January 1st, roughly.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine in November, December, and there's January, February, and then there's March, April, right? 6 months out. So imagine if today was January 1st and you look back to the beginning of November, like you had 2 months of time that you spent probably not doing a lot.
Right.
And and the more you experience this, you'll get better at this. This is future regret.
Yeah.
Not going 6 months out, but to the point where it's still in the middle of the time you have to complete this project. But the 2 months you burned, right? You're now January 1st. What do you wish you had done with the 2 months of time you had?
It's actually what we did during COVID, John.
Mhm.
I was just thinking, like, one of the things we did was the world shut down. What will we wish when this is all over? We did with our time, right? I mean, we were thinking more, but that's actually what created Lift, like to actually stay in. Anyway, sorry, I was just.
But I mean, yeah, I'll give you an example. Like, like for example, Kathy with the team has to plan these first Thursday events, which is very stressful every month, right? Instead of looking at it as 4 weeks out, or like the one in January is X weeks out, you can look at it and break it into thirds, right? As in, like, take the time from now to the one in January, right? So what day is the January one? January 8th, right? Okay, so today is November 13th, right? You can look at January 8th and break the time up into 3 parts. And from here till January 8th, the first third is what you're in now. The first third is over, and the one day into the first third being over, you're going to regret what you didn't do now. What is that? Like, and again, this is a rep skill. You got to first get aware of the overworry, overthinking. You got to get aware of the facts and predictions being mashed. But as you go into this, it's a way to start to think about using time by taking what sometimes is too far out and chunking it into thirds. And then imagine after the first third, because usually most people blow the beginning. Everyone tends to work their ass off in the last third.
Yeah.
So usually the key is always to actually be more creative, more experimental in the first third. And the best way to think of it is at the end of the first third, you're going to see that you did nothing. You just kept planning and scribbling and stuff. You never published anything. You never launched anything. You never took any shots. And so you're going to wish you tested more, experimented more. And so spending time, and the more you do it, you get better at it. You can actually feel and imagine what that will feel like after the first third's over. So that makes you move with greater speed and urgency, and also with greater courage now. So that's one advanced skill. The second advanced skill is kind of how do you do this facts, predictions all mashed together? First is getting better at actually articulating all the facts, but recognizing the pause that you need to generate before you go to predictions. Like your tone is different. Predictions, and why I put plan A versus plan Z, is that there's a range of possibilities. Usually when you're not good at the skill, we tend to talk about our predictions in the same tempo and tone as the facts. There's one thing that'll happen. Then this will happen. No, like versus happened, right? That's facts. There's a range of possibilities, and plan A and Z is to go and push to the extremes. It could go really well, or most people think really badly, or it could actually really work. And there's a lot in between. And so you get better at coming up and seeing the range of A versus Z. And so as a result of it, like there's a lot more agility in your thinking. There's a lot more agility that it could go this way, it could go this way. And a lot of choices in between. And so the pause in between starts to change the way that you process. And once again, when it's in your head, it's hard to see, which is why you have to either write it, expose it, and then when you explain it to someone is usually when you can start to see how much you mash it all together, or how you act differently on the facts versus the predictions, which also are guesses and opinions.
Even when we're like planning stuff out for, let's say, this coming first Thursday or the next coming first Thursday, like the times when like we think of something that we want to like say do, and already one of us is thinking that's just not gonna work and we don't want to go into it, versus
Yeah.
like we don't actually know. Maybe we go into it, like we don't have to stick to this plan. Like we could just explore it and kind of see what happens. But like almost like that immediate, I already think it's not gonna work. It's not worth the time to go into it.
Yes. And a lot of times that immediate it's not going to work. It's because you've experienced or seen something, but everything has changed. So the variables have changed. And so if you're making predictions of it's not going to work, that means that you think every variable is the exact same. And that's not true. And so this is where the facts are the facts. Something could have not worked before. But then when you go into predictions and someone says, well, it shouldn't work because it didn't work before. That's plan A. But you're like, on the flip side, it could work. And it makes you have to think, but what variables change from the last time to this time? And so even being able to do that will start to make you talk differently, speak differently. So, but I go back from the left saying, as you are aware, usually is enough to go back to mission. The red box on the right under A, you can re-attack that once you're aware of the red box on the left of the overthinking, worrying, or the facts predictions. As soon as you're aware of it, it's amazing how attacking the same thing again produce different results. If that doesn't work, you can go back and look at the advanced skill, try that. And once you feel like, okay, I got that, try that back on mission. You have to constantly have this sort of mission, self oscillation. On the mission front, I'll give you 2 advanced skills. So this is an interesting insight that came from listening to Mark Brackett in part, but also other things we know. So I put 1 p.m., think about before you go to bed, a.m. when you wake up in the morning. So one of the worst things we tend to do is inject impossible problems in our head right as we're about to go to sleep, right? Cortisol shoots up, you're gonna have a bad night, and it's gonna start the process of the next day being bad again, right? And then what do we do the next day? We do the worst thing imaginable, which is cortisol's back up because now you're awake, but we think we don't have the energy. So we are very gentle on ourselves and we try to cheer ourselves up in the morning. So you can see how it goes wrong both ways, right?
In the morning.
I'm trying to solve an impossible problem, right? I'm trying to go back in time and change the fork of a decision I made before that, like, God damn, if I made the other one, it would have been better, right? Or like you're worrying too much about something too far out. And you think if I keep worrying, I'll be better prepared for the bad thing that'll happen. Or, usually it's a bad thought, but the cortisol shoots up in the evening. And then in the morning, you go really light. And so as a result of it, it's this feeling of like, I can't really get to work on the hard stuff till much, much later, right? And this massive ramp of warm up, including little social media, a little this, a little that, everything to just cheer me up, gentle on myself, versus the opposite is this. As you sense these impossible problems in the evening, you park it. That's like reading an email partway and then saying, I'm going to close it, put it unread because I can tell this is and then I'm going to park it for the morning. This is harder to do, which is why it's an advanced skill. Parking the stuff that's raising too much cortisol. In the morning, when you wake up, natural cortisol is happening. Even when you think you're exhausted, you have more cortisol. Attack the hard stuff. And if I'm struggling with the hard stuff, add physical hard stuff like lifting weights and attack the hard stuff. This notion of using the natural biological rhythm of how we operate to attack hard missions. So this is an advanced skill. I'm going to give you the super advanced skill, which comes much later. Too dangerous for most people to do. Okay? Super advanced skill.
I know what I'm doing.
Okay. So this super advanced skill we actually created working with Josh Waitzkin, the chess champion of the world and all this stuff. But it started by in the evening, you're now injecting the hard problem into your head as the very last thing you're looking at. So now keep in mind, I said hard stuff because you get better at knowing the difference of impossible. So you're more trained that you tend not to overthink as much. So you're injecting things that feel hard to insane in the evening into your head. And it's the very last thing you're looking at. The very first thing when you wake up, you're waking up trying to solve that again. That notion of bookending evening till like morning with the actual hard mission. And knowing, by the way, all I need is a minimum of an hour and a half sleep, which sounds like nothing, to be able to have my subconscious mind attack it and solve something. And so that notion of our subconscious brain is a computer that's taking my life experience and it's attacking this problem through my sleep, in my subconscious. And when I wake up in the morning, by looking at it and trying to solve it, you can literally bring up what your mind did. Super advanced skill, which is why you start with it, you're going to probably never sleep, and you're going to keep going this path of cortisol too high, waking up, and I have to cheer myself up, be gentle, and before you know it, we never actually make progress in the mission. So,
old boss of mine, she's like top Hollywood acting coach, constantly traveling. And a big part of her work is her primary. Part of the reason why she is so successful is because she does something called dream work. So
She does what?
It's something called dream work. Her mother created this system of work, and she'll assign, say like an actor, famous actor, has a movie part, really wild, challenging, sexual, whatever, anything, right? And you're trying to get to like the core of what this story is about, and also the core of what this character is about, and that driving force, right? She'll do a series of something called dream homework assignment, where you actually assign yourself right before bed a question, inviting in a dream, right, around this question of what the character story, and then you just go to sleep. Just forget about it, go to sleep. Wake up, make sure you have like a journal next to you in the night.
Yeah.
So if you wake up in the night, you immediately roll over.
Yeah.
It does not, whatever you dream, no judgment, it doesn't have to seemingly correlate, because the unconscious mind doesn't work that way, right? But you write it all down, every dream, every image, everything. And then you would bring that dream in, analyze it, and then act it out with ideally an acting partner and her coaching. And then you would take all of that unconscious work and really it's much more complex. She's remarkable. Her mother was a genius. And then you apply it.
Makes sense.
Infuse it.
Right.
And that's why her actors win the Academy Awards.
That's cool. So I don't know if you guys, Ezra, could you hear what Sylvie said or no?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
Recently had a dream, just like right before the academy actually. So I showed this to Florence. So in my dream, I had my family had this high-tech business, and I had to go on this mission to go into this vessel, shrink down to like microscopic size, and go into human vessel, blood vessel, to solve like
nanobots.
Jesus.
Okay.
to like solve like this cure for the humankind. And my parents were really against, because it's a very dangerous mission.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to go.
It's not like you think this is true.
And then they were trying to like send me away in the middle of the night. Like,
Save this conversation for lunch, or is
yeah.
it maybe lunch? But I think the nanobots one was Spider-Man.
Are there more stuff?
There is one more. Sorry.
Then going into others. Maybe we save it for next week. Should we go into this next week?
Okay. True. Okay. I can save that for next
Maybe we
week.
small slide what we have a little bit. I
Okay.
can't tell.
I don't know if
Questions and thoughts, you guys. Like we did cover a ton of stuff. We covered a lot. I mean, I said to Charlie beforehand, like I wanted to break it into like 3 different classes, but couldn't figure out how to do that. So we wanted to cover the Leadership Academy
With the lazy
at the
route, just covered all of it.
high level, and then teach a few more lessons as we like looked at the.
Can we go back into like the time chunking thing? Because I feel like we were talking a little bit about how constraint can actually add creativity and stuff like that, but it's something that we keep running into, and I keep running into, is that like I find it very hard to manufacture my own constraint to like get going. So like I like this idea of like the thirds that feels like new and interesting. Like I've never tried that, so it's like, but it's like manufacturing it yourself when you know you have another. Like it's like you don't want to freak yourself out.
Right.
Yeah,
There's like balance between, for example, even right now, it's like the pressure of like, let's say, getting this guest list filled up this week is also making you stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then knowing that I have next week, it's kind of like a don't freak out, still kind of freaking out.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like that balance.
Work.
It's not working.
Yeah.
It's like not working for me right now. But it's like that balance of like push now, but also not to the point where I'm making myself stupid because I still have some time. It's I think we're in a weird spot.
So I think about I'm trying to think like intuitively, sort of like how I'm looking at this. So the first thought I had was kind of coming back to this slide of applying intuition and with the right energy. Meaning like someone asked me like kind of what I wish for, like in sort of just in general, like say for next jump. And it was like, we don't need capital to grow anything. We don't need any introductions. But so then it came down to that knowledge area. And what do I wish for? I was thinking like as I refine it even overnight, I just wish for every person who works at Next Jump to wake up and visceral draft. And so to actually push the energy to try to solve difficult things. And what's interesting about visceral drafting is you're kind of like Sylvie's point about the acting, and you're trying to capture what your mind's it's almost like everything you know, you're kind of like life experience, which is already in you. You're getting used to building a routine of solving the most difficult stuff first thing in the morning. And I don't mean first thing like at 7 a.m. or 7:30, but like kind of before you get to like, say, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., you are spending time trying to go through like, what do I want to do? Right? What do I want to get done? And there's something before you look at metrics, before you look at like the tactical numbers and things I have to do, like looking and actually going more free to like, what do I want to do? And what ends up happening, like most things, like gratitude exercises, anything else, once you get used to this pattern of visceral drafting, first thing on something difficult, your mind will start to always know that's what's happening in the mornings. Your automatic behavior becomes used to it. So even without injecting the problem in the evening, it already knows when you wake up, that's what you're going to do. So you're like used to actually just getting automated into solving the difficult stuff. And the difficult stuff, and this is where it's kind of starting to get aware of how my intuition is solving the problem differently than how my metrics-driven version is solving the problem, how my to-do list tactically solves the problem, how my, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of ways that we think we're supposed to act, but it's trying to learn how my mind acts. And it is inclusive of everything I've seen and experienced. And it takes time before it knows that, wait, not only it can do it, I think the most common thing is you'll try to do it, it won't work, so then you're going to bail, right? In many different ways you're going to bail. You're going to bail by saying we got to at least be productive in something, right? So we start to move to a might as well check off lists of stuff to do. Do that every week, and what happens is most to-do lists checked off don't result in anything when summed up over time. Like, and it happens for a lot of us that like all these tactical things, you're like, I have to do this. And we often overweight the have to and the timing of it. Even if it waits a day, 2 days, even sometimes a week, nothing substantially changes when you do it earlier. Nothing substantially changes when you do it a little later, which meant that you had precious energy and mental bandwidth to try to see like, what do you want to create, do, make? And being able to see that imprint and start to see like how my mind is attacking that, like that's what I think about, the visceral drafting. And so when I think about even like say the event, as it gets closer, yes, there's going to be a list of tactical stuff you're going to have to do. And that will start to take over. In the earlier part is where you can actually think. You can try to imagine it making it that much better. As you get later, like you won't have a lot of bandwidth for that, right? Like whether it's you have to order the food, you have to get the guests, you have such a long list of stuff.
What feels natural is once you have the thing filled up or whatever you want to have, then you're like, ooh, then I'll spend time trying to make it awesome, right? Like once I have like the base is covered, then I can go and dream, right?
Yeah.
That's why I was just thinking like the idea of like a backup plan. Like I'm sure there's a non-ideal way to do it where you're like, if I had to find a way to get this done, and it's not super ideal, but it's like I could figure out some basic plan that would say that might get the job done, like C, B, C. You know, back of the envelope, I think we can make that happen. And plan A, but to put it aside and then be like, but what would be a much, you know, sometimes you need to know, like even for this class, last night, I'm like, it's late, we have a lot going on. Not ideal to have a bunch of scratches and whatnot and not be able to like, but like not ideal, but it's going to be okay enough. And if we have time and if we can, and we wake up feeling, you know, then we can make it better. You know, it's like, Versus like, I felt that way last night. I'm like, we don't have a lot of time to figure out what we're going to teach in the class. And at some point you're like, okay, we have a plan. It's going to be good enough. I would like it to be better. And I'd like to wake up and have like clarity and, you know, what's the one thing we want to make sure, and then hammer it over like 10 times with 10 different ways to say it. But like, that doesn't always happen. But I feel there is like something to be said for having your, I hate to use the word shitty first draft, but like just have a draft of what you could do so that you can get some of your brain back, you know? Like there has to be a way to do it that you have to spend some mind share on it, right? Like you might need like some good energy to think about like what would be like our backup plan of what we can do if they don't see that.
Because I had something like that, but it almost feels like chickening out or like taking the wrong way out. At this point.
Like because it's early.
Because it's early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that's what it feels like.
And so like, now I was trying to pull up this slide because on the strategy, right? If you look about like what visceral drafting does, you're like painting like how you want to succeed, what success looks like. And that done right can get you excited. And that's the notion of ambition. Once you get that drive, that ambition, you will see that when you try to actually figure out what to do, it's hard to, I mean, a classic example is this. Oftentimes we have to email people, right? Or just reach out, text, email, whatever, like sales, solicitation and whatnot. It's hard to know that when you feel energized and you feel like this is fucking awesome, that same note you write just sounds and feels differently, even for the recipient and the person who feels like my head's spinning, I'm a little confused, I'm not sure it's gonna work, but I have to invite people. Like you can feel the difference. And if you don't believe me, then when someone writes back or something doesn't work, the very next step is when it's really clear. When you have ambition, when you have something you want to get done, it's amazing how much faster the next iteration comes. When you don't, the next iteration almost doesn't exist. It's like that one shot you took the life out of you. You have no more oxygen. You're like, oh my God, and it's so depressing. And you'll just kind of collapse. Versus when you have something you want to do, which is what the 50% idea of visceral, you get excited at it. You take a shot, it doesn't work. You're like, it's probably too complicated. And then you have another shot you want to do. It's amazing how your natural drive for the next iteration, the third iteration, and someone else like you talk to and you're like explaining to them, oh, isn't it cool if we do this? And then they'll ask one subtle question, like, oh my God, that's the missing piece. Yeah. And then the next iteration comes. That notion of visceral drafting and applying your intuition on what do you want to do, right? Because that's the question we ask, like, what do you want to do? Like having that vision of what you want to do, even if it's half-baked, the test is, does it get you fired up? And you'll see in the beginning it won't, because you're stuck, you're over worrying, you're over regretting, you're like feeling like I don't have the energy. And so like you'll have to keep going at it before you get to a place you realize, wait, the value in getting that drafted and the value of practicing solving the difficult problems when I have the highest cortisol, the highest energy, before inputs change whatever I'm going to do into visceral reactive. It's the inputs that actually alter what you wake up with. When you wake up is when your intuition is most alive. So I want to use it. And then what we've taught in the academy was through different physical oscillations, you can regenerate that fresh intuition, maybe 3 times, maybe 6 times a day. And so you can apply that same intuition 3 to 6 times more, but most people don't even apply it once. So what you're gonna say?
I think because the word drafting keeps coming up, like a lot of authors keep coming up, but Toni Morrison, obviously world famous writer, there's documentaries. She's done one documentary. She doesn't do a lot of interviews, but she talked about her process, and it came about out of necessity. She was a single mother. She was an editor. She had 2 small sons, and the only time she could work on her project was if she got up a little bit before the sun. And so it was just the only time of the day when she wasn't completely tapped out by all of her projects, plus the responsibility of raising 2 children. Right. And then it turned into this ritual sometime between 4:30 and then the children getting up at 7:30. And she completed these remarkable bodies of work in this very short period of time.
So it reminds me of when I went to visit Ezra in his studio, that was the top discussion he had, where his routine when he started in his studio was to clean yesterday's mess.
Right.
And I was telling him, you're taking your most precious intuitive energy,
Right.
and you're spending it like on meaningless tasks. And sometimes when we get stuck, we'll use cleaning as a way to mindlessly do stuff while thinking. But when you have that sharpest intuition, I'm going to apply it. Now, I'm hoping what Ezra got out of the academy is you can regenerate that morning energy intuition 3 to 6 times more in the day. And if you can find that intuitive energy 3 to 6 times more in the day, and remember, you're getting it in peaks and you're getting it in the valleys. You can find it on both sides. In the highest energy version of you, you can find that intuitive energy. In the lowest energy versions of you, you can find that intuitive energy. And so that notion of being able to use these physical cues to like generate that is kind of cool. But yes, like it's so powerful to be able to recognize that is like my supercomputer. Like our intuitive knowledge and brain is more powerful than anything NVIDIA chips and OpenAI with ChatGPT. It's more powerful, but it's a different kind of powerful. See, it's not as powerful as being encyclopedic. If you want to take everything that's documented and written and analyze it with accuracy, the speed of AI in doing that is far greater. That skill is no longer a needed human skill. And so people are struggling and fighting that because that's how they valued, like their skill and got paid for it. AI changed that almost overnight, and it's accelerated. So to recognize that's not where the skill lies. The skill lies in like literally using our intuition and creating, and such a different skill that the first thing that I think in the entire Leadership Academy was getting people to see that mindset shift is so different than what it used to be, that you have to start, this is the awareness part, you have to start to see our automatics are all leaning towards the old way. And if you don't recognize kind of what—
You started really by saying the biggest thing coming out of the academy is that your own role in engineering your weekly routine. Like you have to understand your own, like you really have to be like a scientist of like your best energy and when it's happening and what's happening and when it's not, what are you telling yourself what you're doing? Like, like you have to like really be, you have to want to figure it out for yourself. Like there's only so much right? I mean, and it's where I think having a TP, like he'll challenge me a lot on what it is. Like, what are you actually thinking about when you first wake up? Like to be that aware of those things, like to insert the hard problem, not the impossible problem. And the impossible is like, you're just regretting shit you can't change from your past.
But one of the nuances that I know when intuition's working is that it works almost like bubbles, right? You're like, I have like 4 or 5 different bubbles.
You don't see it.
There's a bubble of this, where mine's going. I don't even know how it connects, but like there is a part, your brain's already doing the work of connecting, but there are different bubbles versus like, when people say, okay, I'm thinking about this, I know they're using the logical brain to sound like, because the intuitive brain is that schizo, right? But it does connect more than you realize. And the more you use it, it's better at finding the connections. Should we take anything? I don't know. And it's been a longer class. Anybody from the Zoom? We can talk more. The goal of this was we can go straight to lunch and continue chat here. My guessing is probably we need another mic. Yeah.
I was actually thinking about what intuition is and still trying to discover exactly what it is, but I feel like we talk about our gut instinct, or our gut is like our second brain. We actually store neurons there, like hundreds and millions of neurons in our guts. And I started to think about like, what are we like, how are we getting this information that lets us make these like really rapid, quick decisions, if something's safe or not, or to do or not to do something? And I think intuition is like, plays like 2 roles. First, intuition is energy because it's you, and it's also scanning constantly while you're aware any other energies. I'm just trying to figure out what intuition does.
Intuition also goes into the past and into the future.
Yeah, totally.
So that's exactly
right. It's also stored in our spine, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So Ezra, I'm going to pull up this slide. So this guy that got like really talked about a lot was the head of AI for Tesla. His last name is Karpathy. And I pulled a couple slides from his thing where he talks about, this is AI, by the way. See, think about anything that is documented. AI can read and analyze with accuracy and spit back at you in seconds, right? So when I think of using AI, the thing I think about is, does documentation exist? If documentation exists, that means I can use AI, tap it, and pull out incredibly accurate information. The flip side is this: when documentation doesn't exist, it's still answering. And this is where you know where hallucinations are more likely to occur. When AI is giving you stuff, it's because that information you're asking often doesn't exist. And so like the more times you do it, you'll know better. But when I think of intuition, this is the slide that he talked about, that the reason why AI doesn't have intuition, and this is the way he described it, was this notion of there's no continual learning, no equivalent of sleep to consolidate knowledge, insight, or expertise into weights. See, like what's happening in our mind.
Weighting of information.
It's like, and remember, weighting of information changes over time constantly. And our mind's doing that. And so what's interesting about the weighting, this is if you're solving impossible problems, overthinking, you're weighting although it's impossible and you can't solve it, you think you can. So you're like going back in time and thinking that I could have made a different choice, and that waiting can be lethal.
Yeah.
In the same way, when I'm trying to control the future, and or if I can think about the future more, I can like fix it or solve it or be prepared for it. Like, so there's a waiting, but untrained, we weight the wrong stuff, right? So we don't use our intuitive mind very well.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, 100 years, we didn't need to. It's only the top level C-suite that did. Everyone else just had to follow orders, rules, instruction. So the world got trained down to schooling to be trained for a lot of logical work, except technology caught up and now logical work is gone. And so that intuitive work is there, but this is just one way to look at it. The way he described it was, think of intuition as kind of what's happening with all our life knowledge, processed through sleep, and then it gets weighted.
Because intuition is at the end of it, it's self-trust. Intuition is when you, I don't know, this is the way I teach it. Like when I teach a creativity class, we talk about creativity and intuition. And when you let your intuition really guide you, it's because there's a lot of self-trust in what your decision process making is equipped to do. So like as artists, for example, I feel like when I go against my intuition, I fuck it up. And if I go with my intuition, even if like art, you can't really fuck up art or whatever, but you do, because then you end up doing something that maybe, whatever, it's a failure, you do something else. But when I trust that intuitive, creative process that I'm going through, usually I end up with something that I'm pleased with for myself.
Right. It reminded me of that dinner we had before we did the art first Thursday.
Yeah.
Where several of the artists said, when I built the art piece to sell, it never sold.
Never sold.
Right. So that was the common theme that came up. But don't forget this call we had this week with this very, experienced executive, which is very common, said emotions, right? Protective and destructive. And so the notion of go with my intuition is often a very short-lived, it's like good in a certain window, but generally speaking, when it comes to important decisions, what do? You stop in the intuition. The more serious it is, you go into making a pros and cons list and everything, and we start to go down this path, which is not intuitive. And so this is why we said there's the danger of intuition, which is much more usually what overrides everything. We might act like, you should trust your gut, go with your instincts, whatnot, but you'll see that like there's so much danger and so much regret, and you can start overweighting that through your memories and sleep and everything. But the flip side is this: how do I tap the power of intuition, not by accident, but deliberately, like intentionally?
Right.
And so this to me is what we're building in our module 4, that and 5 that the Leadership Academy team experienced. I think it's the most advancement we've had in this work. But
Charlie, you remember the pyramid diagram that you made? On the bottom is physical, spiritual is on the top.
Yes.
That's how you get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get there. To build upon your intuition, I think it's a spiritual thing. Because we learn and we learn, but it's always partial. You know, we can't know everything so I think the best way, and I feel like we saw it during Academy after our sound bath, it like really opens up whatever that third eye is, because intuition comes from a place that accesses a realm, a world that we don't really get to go to. It's us, but we don't get to see, you know, it's just like that quick thing.
And the part, Ezra, I think what we're talking about is almost the application of intuition into, and I put mission. It's not like a journey of just trying to go and play with my intuition. It's literally using it.
Decisions have to be made, especially like serious ones that have like real impact and real. How do you tap into it when you need it?
Success. I am trying to generate success.
And something dangerous coming up, but it might not all be right? And yet I got to make a decision quickly. So then it's to expose it, so you can get somebody else's intuition against it is where you start to be able to sharpen your own. I'm like, I feel we should do this, stop, and then we should consider plan Z now. Mm-hmm. Somebody else can say, why though? You need to tap into, understand where is that intuition coming from? It's coming from a past experience. Well, that past experience isn't this experience because, history rhymes. It doesn't repeat.
Yes.
I've struggled with that. I'm like, I've felt this before. Here we go. It's different. Right. It is different, but you don't, when you're moving fast, you've got to make quick decisions. That intuition is telling you, that's be very destructive. Yeah.
Yes.
Past.
Experience, stat with that experience.
Yeah. And said what happened. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But what ends up happening is this: the idea and why it's drafting is this: if you have your intuition, this is the whole discussion I started with at the beginning. Yeah. In the intuitive blurting it out, nuggets of gold are popping out.
Yeah.
But if you blurt it out, the whole packet to the recipient that you will create more damage, right? You will create so much destruction that it could be just one line you added in. Yeah. If you remove that, all the value will be there. And so, but how do I get the gold out? How do I harvest the gold without the damage? Yeah. Right, for one. And this is where
clear.
Like collective intuition is the most powerful.
Right.
But to get collective intuition.
There it is, Charlie.
Right?
That's what I feel we're not saying that we need to be saying. It's a collective intuition, because we are talking about a world where, yes, can you do things solo and take your intuition and go? Yeah, but at some point, really hard missions are going to require more than one person. You're going to need other people.
So can I tell you?
Can't share your intuition because you've got baggage and your ego and all the different things that prevent us from getting our intuition out. You're never going to be able to tackle a really hard mission.
But this is the nuance in the leadership and practice, right? Yeah, collective intuition, great. So I'm going to wait for everyone else to kind of generate it, and then I'm just going to chime in.
Yeah, then they're going to contribute to that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's waiting for somebody else to start that process. This is like really crazy. I have no idea where to start. I'm not going to be the first one to put on the table where to start. And what people don't realize is the whole idea of you're losing whatever you don't rep and train. We lose that ability before you know it. We automatically believe. Right? The right way for me to live life is to start by looking at what does everyone else think I should be doing, which is the notion of visceral reacting is the muscle we get imbalanced in. And so what do you want to do? Your collective knowledge and to recognize it cuts both ways. It's both dangerous, but it's got nuggets of gold, power. How do I rep making sure I capture my intuition, put it on the table? And that's the idea of being authentic. It charges you up for someone else to then do the same thing. But that muscle takes time to build.
And a lot of crap might come out.
A lot of crap will come out. Not even.
It will come out. On you.
The money email, remember that?
Yeah.
The issue of being $170,000,
right?
Yeah. And the last email I sent that woman, I reamed her ouch, right? Like, not with cursing or anything, but it was just like,
We'll cut this out of the video that we're in right now.
and then this week, Ezra and I had a few talks on it, leadership training, and he was like very clear about what some of the stated goals were. But I still had to initiate the next email. On the last email, I had reamed her out, and I was so pissed about it. I've been angry about it.
Yeah.
So I wrote an email, and then I wrote it, and then I wrote it again, and I wrote some cutting things into it that were personal and very directed at her. And then I was like, right? And I was like, I really want to send that, but I can't. I have to call Ezra first, right? And Ezra has less rage than I do, just like as a general rule. He gets angry about things that I don't get angry about, vice versa. And so I read it to him, and I read it over and over to him. And each time he would have a different note, like, remove this, remove that. And he helped me edit it all out, right? Until it was super clean, devoid of emotion, devoid of anything that was pointed. And then by the end of it, ran it a few more times until I sent it. And by the end of the day, we had a response. We'll get you paid next week.
Okay, wow, that's cool.
So I just think just to say the collective intuition and the power of two, and just like taking some of the lessons from Leadership Academy into this week was very. So
that's very cool. The one last piece I was going to add was this idea of paying tuition, making mistakes. We were talking about this kind of as an ending point. I think of it as no tuition-free life, right? The idea of not making mistakes. I don't have to learn lessons. If you want to learn, especially how to harness intuition, there's going to be a lot of tuition you're going to have to pay. The key is I wrote, we don't want to pay maximum tuition. You need to pay tuition, but how do I not pay as much tuition if I can catch the mistake sooner? But you have to see it. And this is where the problem for all of us is our own intuition is hard to see. And the only way you'll see it is by applying it. And so the notion of applying it through drafting is safer than applying it through execution, right? And oftentimes, what ends up happening even in the time zones of a third of time blocks, if you wait till the end, you'll see as things get crazy and you don't have time, you end up having to apply your intuition to move fast. Otherwise, you just can't get it done. And that's where you pay like a lot of tuition. You pay a lot of tuition through errors that could have been prevented, through planning that could have, and ideas and strategy that could have had more time sooner, but we end up just saving it. And then when things get crunched and whatnot, you have no choice, but you're gonna have to apply intuition because you have to move fast. I just think of it as once you're moving fast, it's very hard to move just logically. You end up using intuition more and more. And so this notion of that intuition is trainable. And knowing it can be as damaging as it is full of nuggets of gold, how do I train the blurting out and capturing the nuggets of gold and then getting somebody else to blurt out, right? So even the example I was thinking is it's awesome how it worked out. And you made your intuitive note and then you knew it could be dangerous to Ezra helped, but sometimes it's powerful and some problems to say, okay, before Ezra sees your version, what's his boom version, right? And now you compare both. So not as in he's reacting to yours, but you both. And sometimes you're like, whoa, I did not see that angle, right? It's like two people trying to solve a similar problem and they apply their intuition. That's when you're like, whoa, I did not see that at all, right?
I mean, I think he had stated a lot of what he wanted to try. Well, I have to hear this. He doesn't want to get involved. He doesn't want to he did, but
it's a cool exercise. We've done that sitting next to each other in our office, and we're both doing a draft, and then it's nerve wracking when he'll say, send me yours, I'll send you mine, and then I'm reading it, and my first reaction is think of that, I'm thinking he's gonna think mine's crap, but I didn't think of that. That's brilliant.
Right.
It's so cool when you can, Then sometimes it's like, wow, that's crap what I just created. His is way better, or vice versa. And then you're like, wow, I just learned something.
Side by side drafting.
At least I got my version out. I'll see what was really in there.
Right. But you'll see, writing is good because on one hand it refines, but it's way too slow because if you talk, you can 5 to 10x the amount of intuition you can capture. But then you have to realize your mind's going even faster. So this is the part where when you're able to. and you can tell when two intuitive conversations are going on, the speed of the back and forth is massive. You're just ping-ponging live. When it's not, it's very like past the microphone kind of feeling. Right, this class went much longer than I thought, but
Next week,
you guys in the Zoom, some of you who can reach out to us, tell us sound. I don't know. I'm assuming Mike, we probably need one down there too, right? Right. Okay. But
yeah, Nadia, let us know if there's anything we could do better. If we teach in here, in here, you're okay. You can hear us.
and I can't tell if it's better here on the table or on the island.
Yeah.
Kitchen island kind of feeling.
Maybe we'll try that next week.
But, all right.
All right, you guys. We'll see you next week.